And the next talk is titled FugaciousFilm and will be presented by Hyosun Kwon. I hope I pronounced that right.
Hi, I'm going to present our paper FugaciousFilm, exploring attentive interaction with ephemeral materials. And I'm Hyosun Kwon from Mixed Reality Lab at University of Nottingham, UK. FugaciousFilm is a salt film-based touch display designed as a platform for attentive interaction. So in this talk, I'm going to go through initial technical explorations to establish the basic feasibility and techniques, followed by early prototypings of concept demonstrators, and finally I'm going to discuss some of our user study findings on one of our applications. Throughout this talk, we are aiming to disclose how ephemeral and unstable material can be harnessed into design of partially controllable interface, so therefore proposing a strategic use of using the material as an interface itself in interaction design. The term fugacious is a synonym of ephemeral, defined as tending to disappear or fleeting. The concept of ephemerality has been introduced in HCI by many previous works in the field of tangible interaction design, such as ephemeral UI. And the physical transient materials such as soap bubbles like fog, wind, and ice have been employed in various tangible interactive systems to enable rich sensory experiences. And also the concept has been applied to digital ephemerality to propose as a means of security arising from the permanency of digital data. This transitory and somewhat immaterial nature of ephemeral interface appears to naturally align with the ambient and peripheral experiences in the field of ubiquitous computing, but only a small number of ephemeral interfaces have been developed to combine those transitory materials with robust or functional applications. So therefore, we are trying to extend the experience and the use of such interface to the other end, so that which users become highly attentive throughout the interaction with ephemeral materials. So we chose to work with the salt film for various reasons. It is well known for its fleeting nature, and well, many people will be already familiar with the material experience and the properties of the salt film from our childhood. And we took on advantage of previous works on colloidal display, which have shown that the salt film can be also used as a projection surface. And obviously it is easily obtained. And finally, the duration and other important properties of the material can be easily modified by the variety of ways. So the entire setup is shown as illustrated. We use a webcam to detect the salt film, the presence of the salt film, and a lip motion device to do the finger tracking. The whole system is as compact as the size of the ordinary office desk, and the frames and wipers to create the salt film can be designed into various shapes and sizes depending on the applications. Our approach has been to develop and study a novel salt film interface which users can touch, push, pull, and pop its fragile surface as a way of interacting with the digital content that has been projected onto the surface. So we implemented 5 possible interface techniques that can be applied onto the film. So firstly, creating and popping interface requires the system to detect the presence of the film. So we implemented the color tracking system with the webcam. So we used the threshold value of two states to distinguish and compared them to distinguish if the salt film is still alive or not inside the frame region. And the fugacious film also functions as a penetrable touch screen when the finger is wet, so that we can perform like touching, pushing, and pulling gestures onto the display. So for this purpose, we use the lip motion device to accurately track the position of the user's fingertip in 3D space. Well, however, the pulling interface had been implemented after the pilot test, so that I'll go through later in the presentation. Well, though I'm briefly covering the technical part, the more details can be found in the paper. The first demonstrator we created is fragile passcode. It is to see how the skill of handling fragile material might be harnessed into the security in ephemeral interaction. Developing this prototype inspired us to think more about the subtleties of touching, so not only matching the correct pattern but also the depth of touch in each and every section of the pattern. So, and this had reflect on the possibilities of using dangerous interaction techniques. The second prototype is called Serendipity's Music Composer. This is to see how might the random nature of ephemeral materials decay can be shaped and controlled, tamed and incorporated into the attentive interaction as well as aesthetical experience. Finally, the Tic-Tac-Toe prototype was designed to explore multi-user ephemeral interaction. So specifically how this time-critical constraint might engender a sense of precariousness when two people interact with a shared ephemeral material. As an informal interview had revealed that this application could enhance further by the materiality of the salt film, we conducted a pilot test with this application with 4 different versions that you can find the details in the paper. So after the pilot test, we decided to extend the interactional capabilities of fugacious film to include the pulling interface and apply this in this final application. So the main technical challenge lay in detecting both the presence of the film and whether or not the film is still in contact with the fingertip. So we took an advantage of optical phenomena, specular highlight, which is a bright spotlight that is typically seen on the shiny curved surface. So we identified this by a webcam and integrated it with lip motion device to accurately detect the pulling interface. So as a single large frame was chosen for the interaction board, a further subtlety that needs to be considered is the flexibility, the variation in the flexibility across the whole surface. So we therefore tuned our pulling interface to recognize the whole range of possible distances across this large single frame. And finally, in order to gently force the user to perform the gestures with an appropriate delicacy of touch, we found it necessary to introduce inactive regions between each interface region so that no interface was deemed to be happen, so users get no feedback in between each interfaces. So we conducted a rather qualitative user study with one finalized design of Tic-Tac-Toe game with 6 participants. We designed our study in a form of tournament with a proper prize for the winner. And since the prototype is involving relatively novel interactions, we had set up our study in a more realistic situation with an aim to see user reactions and feedbacks in a less controlled settings. The 3 pairs of interfaces are mapped onto the game that created different versions of game, and 26 games were played in total. One additional rule to original Tic-Tac-Toe was that if the film breaks during the game, the user who was on the turn loses the game. So they have to maintain the film in order to win. Right, I'm going to share some of our main findings that can be described in two folds. One is materiality and the other is interface. The user interaction was mainly affected by materiality, that the user intensely aware of fragility of the material and also the types of the interface. Although we have distinguished these two factors, oftentimes it was quite hard to describe the user reactions and feedbacks by separating them apart because they are quite tightly coupled together. Participants were intensely aware of fragility of the material. When some players did not concentrate on the game tactics of the tic-tac-toe but focused entirely on executing the interaction successfully. In this video, the player with cross was more concerned on maintaining the film rather than blocking the knot by pulling the section in the center, so that he did not want to take the risk of breaking the film. We had anticipated that the ephemerality of this film would create a pressure for players to move on quickly. However, we observed the opposite in many cases. The player in this video was intentionally wasting time of approximately 25 seconds in order to make the film weaker and breakable on his opponent's turn. So, however, the strategy did not work as his opponents successfully executed the interaction. Participants found touching interface the easiest. Initially tried to occupy the sections with the touch first, and sometimes regardless of whether this was a good logical move in tic-tac-toe, because it's not only the logic that affects the game, but also the fragility of the film. Pulling and pushing is a tightly coupled interface that reinforces vulnerability of the film, so that the variant of the game involving both of those interactions was found to be the most demanding. Although they had to push the film into the sufficient depths to properly engage it with their fingertip, some participants were tending to touch slightly and then pull back. So again, here, participants did not want to take the risk of breaking the film. Again, more details about the materiality and interaction can be found in the paper. So, ephemeral materials had often been used as ambient and peripheral interactive installations due to its fragility and unstableness, and also unpredictability. From our study of FugaciousFilm, we tried to handle and utilize this vulnerability of the material in more robust and controllable way to actually handle its fragility as an interface. So by enhancing the capability of the material, the boundary of user interaction could be extended as well. So the study was an attempt of extending the use of transient material from ambient to highly attentive interaction. One important lesson that I'd like to highlight in this paper is that, so this was not about proposing soul film as the most suitable material to build a tic-tac-toe game, but the whole design process and the study was to broadening our perspective to see the essence of the material as an interface itself when designing the tangible interactions. I'd like to wrap up my talk with following summaries. The ephemeral materials can deliver highly attentive and even suspenseful experiences. And those materials with such properties can be employed to build solid and robust and functional interactive systems to encourage focused transient interactions. And the study was about practical exploration to see the material as an interface itself. Finally, I'd like to thank all of my co-authors for their effort and invaluable comments throughout this work that had completed all and every bits of this paper. And thank you very much. I'm happy to take any questions.
It's beautiful work, Hiroshi from MIT Media Lab. Maybe not beauty of Tic-Tac-Toe or password protection, but so organic, so ephemeral, so fragile. It's like our life. Once it's break, you can't reboot it. So I think you can think about the extension of that direction, the Tic-Tac-Toe. Also you use the film, but also you can use a lot of the new materials to control the stiffness or reflection light. Then you can really gain some of the controls. Now the projection light is fully under control by computers. But the materially, when it's break up, or how to repair themselves are out of controls. But if you can go into the material world, film or chemistry or biology, there might be a very interesting way to push the envelope of controllability. But the beauty is edge of the controllability. You cannot control everything. Always something break down. That's the more domain of the art. So hope you don't get stuck so much about the usability study of task or performance. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Thank you.
Okay, my question is that one of the important advantage of such a tangible interface is actually haptic feedback.
Yes.
Which actually provide us a confirmation of touch or contact in such a button-based interaction. And from my experience, haptic feedback from this film is not so strong. And what do you think about this? Can this device provide such a like enough confirmation feedback?
So in terms of the affordance about how to interact with the film, so well, the haptic feedback was not only derived by the touch, but it was so visceral that we can see the film, and as the time goes by, the users could see that it's becoming really thin, like just by looking at it, and it kind of giving them that kind of haptic feedback relatively. As they touch it, they knew that whether it's thick or became thin enough. I mean, thin to be breakable. So it wasn't. So it wasn't. The haptic feedback was also relied on the visual effect of the film itself as well. So yeah, I don't know whether that answered your questions.
Okay, if there's no further questions, then